And we're live.
Yay!
Hey,
Hey,
Peter.
Jeremy. Good morning.
Well,
How are you
this
doing?
I'm doing good. It feels a bit strange to be doing this like this, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I decided I'm going to embrace the experiment because this is it. Yeah, it's an experiment. I realized that because I'm jumping in the middle, but we recorded the pilot also,
Mhm.
but this is the well, basically our second one, but it's number one because as true engineers we start from zero, the numbering. So that was
Exactly.
episode number zero, and this is episode number one.
Episode 1, and we will release episode 0, the pilot, as soon
Yeah.
as we can get it out there. But yeah. Um, well, I guess like we publicized, we decided to do this on Friday, and we'll come back and talk about that. But we might have a few folks who don't know who we are, so maybe we should introduce ourselves
Yeah, that's a good point.
and then explain what we're doing and dive into it.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to start quickly. I'm Peter Szász. I'm Hungarian, living in Budapest, Hungary. I have 25, 26 years of experience in engineering, most of that in some kind of leadership role, but I have some developer background. And yeah, since February, I'm writing a blog and newsletter on petersas.com where I just share the stuff I learned from these 2 decades.
Cool. Yeah, and we know each other from having worked together.
If it was not obvious.
Yeah, we know each other pretty well. And I'm Jeremy. I'm Northern Irish living in France. And I've similar to Peter, I have been an engineer for a very long time. So my career has been slightly non-linear in the sense that I've worked in pre-sales engineering and actually did a little stint even as a pure salesperson. And I worked a long time in consulting. And most recently, I've been a leader of CTO or CPTO or VP of engineering in a few different companies. That's a little bit about me. Much more to discuss, and maybe one of the things that we should talk about at some point, Peter, is just like how did we get here? What are the tips for
Yeah,
people, career and stuff like that? Because it could be
that's a good point. Well, also what we can do is explain what is this,
yeah,
what we are doing
exactly.
here.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, what is this, Peter?
Okay, so this is a retrospective, as the name says. We figured both of us are writing content and newsletter and posts about interesting topics, and added to that, there are a lot of stuff happening in the world. So we figured we had a regular call where we just chat, like catching up as friends, and we figured that would be interesting content to create kind of a retrospective about what we wrote about the week before, what happened in the world, and yeah, similar topics. Or you tell me what is this, because I don't think we rehearsed this part.
No, we haven't. Yeah, I think like just for me, that one of the things I've for ages been talking about in my newsletter is that I wanted to start a podcast and a YouTube channel. Um, and I feel like that this format, the retrospective and discussing, going a little bit more back and forward, and playing devil's advocate sometimes on some of the topics, could actually be a pretty cool podcast format. So we're experimenting with that. And the other part of it is when we did our pilot, we said, okay, well, let's try a pilot episode. We found that the editing of it, or I found the editing of it, is just took us almost as much time as the recording of the episode. And maybe you can outsource
More.
it. Maybe you
We can
can,
say more.
yeah, more, yeah, because it's still not done. But the interesting thing is, we were talking about this on Friday, and you said, "Oh, but we're missing something here. Couldn't we just maybe we should just be more like a live, like just ship it?" And then I was like, oh, "Brilliant! Why don't we just do it live?"
Yeah.
So that we went down a spiral that was kind of funny. We said, "Okay, let's do it. We need a name." So we had I should probably show the Chat GPT. Like we used Chat GPT to help us inspire the name, and the retrospective actually came out kind of well in the whole brainstorming, and then the logo was just a one shot ChatGPT make a logo for the podcast called the
I I, I,
Retrospective.
I look at it as a temporary placeholder,
Yeah, but I mean, like it
but
just
this is
got
good.
us.
It serves its purpose, and it's similar to why I was pushing for just doing it live, doing this fast, because I see how huge this rabbit hole that can manifest if you start to edit, start to cut out some parts, start to make it a bit tighter, re-listen, and then you get bored of your own content
Mm,
and just never publish it. So yeah, I'm optimistic about this format.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe there's like a version of this that's a bit more edited or some clips and stuff like that in the future. But
We'll get there, but the
yeah,
other point is that if we don't publish anything, then all we can iterate on is our ideas. But if we publish, then we have some product that can get some feedback. We are shortening the loop.
exactly. That's something we preach about a lot. So
Yeah.
we're living it painfully. There was a bit of stage fright, I think, before all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay. You want to jump into it?
Let's do it.
So the format of this podcast we were thinking is that we both had articles published recently, and I have a few questions about what you wrote. Like the main point of your or main part of your content last week was about your freelance journey. Like
Mhm.
since early this year, you're freelancing. You had a significant gig where you were, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a fractional VP of engineering or CTO of a
Yep.
VP of engineering, right? At the company, you had a very strict mandate. You
Mhm.
needed to execute on a few tasks, and that's over. So you're looking back, and I mean, I encourage everyone who's going to watch this or watching this to read the actual newsletter. But there were a few points that I'm curious about. Like one of it is that I like the pros and cons about freelancing, because
Mhm.
I think that's very useful. Sometimes people just see the pros of it, and actually one of the things you mentioned as a pro is the flexible schedule, where
Mhm.
in my experience, I found it rather as a con. I because without the structure, I found it that work is often creeping into other parts of my life, and all is just a big mess of, like, I wake up, I think about work. Of course, I do other stuff during the day, but then till the evening or late at night, I work is still a part of it. So I guess my question is, how can you avoid this? How can you keep some structure?
That's like the $1 million question.
Yeah, I
Because
won.
yeah, because I did. I mean, I did write about that. I think like my hardest challenge in all of this has been. I'd say like it's been a month since I wrote a newsletter episode, which is probably a reflection of my ability to get some stuff done in the last month.
Or
Um,
your priorities being at the right place.
yeah, yeah, we had like I did take I consciously took a week off because I had my family visiting, but and I have some other projects, but honestly, I think I think the flexible schedule can be a con. I mean, for me, the flexibility is when you work, you have to plan your holidays, you have to balance a lot of things. But in theory, when you're freelance, you can say yes to a few more things.
Hmm,
Maybe there's also a danger you can say yes to too many things. But you can, and you know, you can organize your day a little bit different. Like I had plans to maybe take some afternoons or days off to go kite surfing because I live
hmm,
in the south of France, and that's the kind of thing when I see the pros of the flexibility. So I definitely see that now. What I found was that when you're working in a job, you have this structure imposed by the schedule,
hmm,
and it's like I know that like every week I have this call. We have a kickoff of the week. I have to prepare certain things. I have this kind of cadence to the week and just even like the day.
hmm,
And putting that back has been, but rebooting that has been hard. I would say it's been a real challenge.
hmm,
I'm trying to figure it out. I think like all I can say is the anti patterns: going to bed too late, not being able to get up, or feeling exhausted the next day, um, not getting out to do exercise, like because I've fallen into all those traps in the
hmm,
last month. Just I the other one that I just that we probably talk more about home labbing later on, but I definitely in the last month spent a disproportionate amount of my time messing around with my home lab. There's some stories to talk about with that, but
Yeah.
it's not something that takes me towards where I want to be. It's something I can enjoy, but it's not like if I had the question of what would I do if I did one thing right now, what would change the game the most for me? It's not working on the home lab, but that's what I did.
But
So
that's, I mean, yeah, I kind of stop here, and I need to ask something about that, because I understand, yeah, like
mm,
I read all these books and everything,
mm,
and the summaries and everything, where you really need to focus on the thing that making the biggest impact in your life 5 years from now, and everything. But
mm,
cannot we look at home labbing and all other hobbies like something that enables you to be able to be focused when you're working, something that gives you, I don't know, just resilience and part of a well balanced life, and do something for just enjoyment, and not connect everything to your
mm.
5 year plan.
Yeah, but I mean, home labbing is what's helped me come back to more of a technical role in my career
Mm,
because I've always still been some level of hands-on with tech. And if I had, like it's also what stopped me staying in sales because I realized that my spare time was spent coding and doing,
yeah,
doing other stuff like that. So yes, I think there's a it's like a value to all of it. But when you use your hobby to avoid some stuff in life, then I think it's also
I see your
probably
point.
you cross over into the danger zone of it.
Yeah.
But
So if
that's why I'm never going to stop home labbing. I just
you need to find these boundaries, or
exactly.
keep it at bay.
Yeah,
it's
and if it
it
wasn't that, it might be computer games or whatever. And
I would argue that home labbing is a bit more better way to spend your time than computer. But who knows? I don't know. It's interesting what you said, that it helped you go back to a more engineering role. Uh, I can relate to that. A long time ago, 2001, something like this, I was very enthusiastic about blogging. It was in Hungary, but I also had a photo blog. And this was, I mean, I never thought it's going to be anything more than a hobby, but actually it helped me land a very important job at a point of my career. I could join a big Hungarian media company and be an advisor on Web 2.0 topics. And it's, I guess my point is, you never know what a hobby is going to be turned out to, and how it's going to help your professional career at one point. So I encourage everyone to follow what they are enthusiastic about, and then just deal with the consequences later.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And thanks, Reese, for your shout out there. It's great to see the comment and know that we've got a few people following. Actually, kind of
Yeah,
more
carry
scary.
on. Yeah, yeah, I'm not looking at that number. So let me have another question. Another one you said is a pro is a clear separation and detachment from the organization. And I know you felt it's a bit controversial, because you explained after not to read anything bad into it.
Mm,
But still, I'm asking, like, isn't this part of the job? Like, in order to be an effective and good manager, you need to be committing a lot, and be personally involved. Like, what I'm saying is, you need to care in order to build trust, and
mm,
what you're saying might be read in a way saying, like, okay, I need to keep my distance, I need to remain objective, I need to resist the temptation to be emotionally involved. And yeah, I guess my question is, I don't know, what's my question? Do you have anything to
yeah,
add?
I'm going to reflect on it in a slightly different way. It is that you have this. Some companies make you think that we're a family, and then you have like this really, in that
Until the
whole
next layoff.
exactly. But in that whole mindset, it's kind of really unhealthy, actually,
Yeah,
because you're not a family, but you find out later when you get laid off, or you see some kind of, because families generally don't get rid of family members, whereas, and so the better analogy that most people bring up is the sports team
yeah,
analogy, and whether you're in, and I actually think that there might be more passion I don't know, it's hard to express passion to be part of a family, but there's definitely passion to be part of a team, to perform and to do something. And but like when you if you imagine like professional players when they're at that kind of professional level, um, I mean, clearly they build some level of relationship with the fans, and some of them are deeply connected to the clubs because they grew up in that
Mm,
club or whatever. But um, I think back to when I changed rowing clubs and I changed, crews. I love rowing. It didn't change. um, I got to know the crew members in my new club, and I really enjoyed rowing with them. Um, but the mutual thing that brought us all together was the high performance and to win.
mm,
And I think one of my dangers in the past, in previous jobs when I've been full time employed, is going like over rotating on the passion and that's what I'm trying to express here is that I think we should all maintain some kind of a healthy connection with work and not let
mhm,
it over dominate. And being a contractor helped me. It was a much more clear line, and that was, I mean, it was also a defined period of time, four clear deliverables within that. I wasn't managing people, so there was also could be a little bit more detachment in some sense there, in this particular scenario. But I just felt like it allowed me to have a slightly healthier relationship, and frankly, I still felt like I want to see that team succeed, even though I'm not there. And my passion for that and the passion for
yeah.
winning and success is still there. But it just felt a bit healthier than some of the. And like when you do that, when you're too close to it, like there's companies I worked at where I was so close to the mission, and like I think back to Red Hat, an open source software company.
Mm,
We all were deeply involved in what Red Hat was doing, also because we were making a difference to the world by bringing open source into enterprise software,
mm,
making it a viable business model.
mm.
Now it's definitely there, but and that led to almost being like over putting too much of yourself into it. I don't
I
know
see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. I liked how you identify this aspect of tying too much of your self-worth to it.
exactly.
Because if things are going well, then this can almost be like a drug. Like
Mm,
our team is succeeding, our organization is succeeding, we are executing on the purpose of the company, and everything is great. But if things don't go so well, I can see how it can be hard to separate
mhm.
the personal failure and the organizational failure and your role in it, and have a healthy way to process that failure. That it can be helpful if you're not tying too much emotionally to the company.
I think also like in particular in a lot of these roles I'm doing now, they're not full time, and I have to
Mm,
balance my time onto other activities as well.
mhm.
And that also means I have to like, even though this one actually, honestly, I was working 3 days and then 2 days a week later on, but like I found a lot of my time was still thinking about their problems.
Yeah,
It's normal, but the it's that kind of having. I had other projects that I need to work on as well. I had to publish the newsletter. Have some other things that I'm working on. So um, it just kind of forces you to switch. I don't know. Yeah, I think they got the best from me still. um, but yeah, I think it made me think about just maybe I was a bit too much in previous jobs sometimes, a little bit too involved in work. And as you say, like it's all great when company's doing well, but when you hit bumps, then it can disproportionately affect you in a way
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
I'm actually not. I wouldn't even go as far saying it's great when the company goes. I still think it can be toxic when everything is going well, because it just consumes everything from you.
Mhm,
It's. I'm not sure it's healthy, even
mhm.
if things are going well, and it shows much better if things are not going that well. Like, yeah, if you need to downsize your team, and that can be super painful.
Oh yeah.
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 All right. I think we touched a bit personal, so I'm going to stay there and use the opportunity. And one of the cons you mentioned, actually, all of the cons you mentioned were pointing to me towards pressure and stress. And I'm just curious, like the pressure of unstable income, networking needs,
Mm,
depending on clients, isolation, lack of motivation
mm.
sometimes. Uh, do you have any techniques or activities that can help maintain mental health and just be more resilient to these stresses?
Um, I would say that given I've struggled over it the last month, I can't say I'm like the best person to give advice, but I can tell you what I'm kind of starting to do
Okay.
more of as as I, this show's called the Retrospective, but I've been
Exactly.
retrospecting over it. So connecting more with other folks,
Mm,
and you know, might be building something with some people soon beyond like what I'm doing. So there's kind of like some collaboration around that. Getting out, one of the things I realized I needed to do in all of this was either be in the garden or be going out for walks. Being in the garden, we have got a bunch of garden work to be done here since we moved to a house recently. I'm not used to doing that, having lived
mm.
on that for so long, but um, that's actually quite good mentally.
Yeah, yeah.
And and going for walks, making sure that like I'm not just cooped up in the house. And I think the other one is just getting my sleep sorted because it just affects so
Mm,
much. And like you can be in this spiral, and that's where I was just in a spiral of not sleeping well,
mm,
going to bed too late. And so I think those are the things I'm trying at the moment. Um, yeah. One thing that I enjoyed when I was going up to Paris every week for work was trying to see someone every week for dinner.
mm.
Um, and so that's the other thing that I kind of catching up with old colleagues because, as I said, like when you're working with people, you see them all the time, you take it for granted, you make great friends, and it's kind of an abrupt end of
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
actual friendships. So yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I went through something similar because since I had my last position held till the end of January or something like that, and yeah, it's a big change. And actually, a lot of what you're saying it resonates with me. I'm part of a Hungarian leadership community, and we introduced these donut calls that a lot of companies are doing to just pair random people once a week for an intro discussion chat, and
Mhm.
I enjoy it a lot. Like
Mhm.
I'm passionate about that's so much fun. And also sleeping super important. I'm not going to get into that, but what you're saying about walking is also very important. And
Peter, you're a big walker.
I walk a lot, but it's not easy because the benefits of walking are not evident. Like it only shows when you're leaving out some walking sometimes, and if you realize that oh my god, I haven't left the flat since 2 days, and no wonder I feel down and I feel demotivated and depressed and everything. But once you're out there, it's just it's nothing. It's a normal part. Sometimes it feels like a chore, like I
Mhm.
need to walk again, and but once you're out and just walking around. It can be really relaxing and recharging.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of games tied to walking, which I'm not going to get into now, but maybe in the next episode that I really like to do something for a purpose. I don't like to do stuff for just randomly. So there are a lot of stuff for like-minded folks out there.
Well, I'm going to ask you, Peter, because you were like, so you, my understanding is every day you go out for a walk in the
That's the
morning,
goal.
and
Yeah,
you
that's
do
the
have like a game that
yeah.
you do. I'd love for you to talk about that because I think
Okay,
it's
so
interesting.
let's get into that a bit. Like there are actually more than one games. There are two kinds. But first of all, I'm not going out every morning now. I used to do that when I was full time working because now I have more flexibility in the day, so I can put in more activities. But yeah, I used to start the day with a virtual commute to out of the flat and then back home and start working. Games are just we can put it to the show notes, the links. These are all based on GPS tracking, and one of them is Wanderer, where basically the goal is to just visit all the streets in your neighborhood, and it's tracking your progress and gives you kind of achievements. The other one, I'm doing it since a much longer time, and it's actually more tied to biking now. It's the concept is that you divide the map, the whole world, for little squares. It's coming from OpenStreetMap because
Mhm.
the size of a tile, I don't know which zoom level, but the size of a tile is roughly 1 times 1 miles, 1 square mile.
Mm.
And the point is to collect as much of them as you can, consecutive ones, so that they are connected and covering either a big square or a bigger blob area. And this simple goals, it takes me to a lot of unknown places that turn out to be really, really fun and exciting. It's because of the distance and the size, it's almost exclusively cycling now. But the rules are just do something with human powered means of transport. So either cycling or rowing can
Mhm.
can be I have some ties
Get
that
some
are,
squares that you can't normally get
yeah,
with
yeah.
those, yeah.
I have some where I need to go into water. I have a plan for one that involves this, I don't know how you call it in English, these water bicycles, this thing that you
Oh,
pedal while being on the water.
pedal boat.
Yeah, it's a recreational device, but on that specific lake you can rent some. So I think that style is going to be captured with this means of transport. It's
I
fun,
love it.
and I can get obsessive with this stuff. I can boast that I'm amongst Hungarians, which is a small group, but I'm the leader of the biggest blob that of consecutive ties. Yeah, it's fun.
I think you must probably know Budapest better than anybody else.
Oh, maybe not than everybody else, but probably above average. I'm pulling the
Yeah.
average up, especially my neighborhood.
Actually,
Yeah.
I might have to try that because living in having moved to a new city, it's actually a really great way to get to know an
Oh
area.
yeah,
So
definitely. So I can
try that.
recommend you squadrats.com. That's a very approachable way of, the whole idea of tiling came from VeloViewer, which is a Strava third-party extension. But now Squadrats is doing it a bit more professionally, what it seems
Mm,
like, and it's really fun.
okay, awesome.
Cool. Maybe I have time for one more question about your newsletter. I had a lot of stuff about the freelance thing, but
Mm.
what also was interesting for me is the highlight of the week about performance reviews.
Oh,
You you showed how can I say it nicely, very strong emotions about performance reviews, and how you think it's well, in line of what the highlight said, is that they are like, what was he saying, something like the destroyer of organizations, or destruction force. So
yeah.
can you elaborate on that?
Um, well, I just there's a really good article that I came across, "Abolish Performance Reviews," by a guy called Phil Hack, which I really enjoyed, and he has a bunch of really good quotes, and actually it's really well researched. He's talking about performance reviews, which is related to the article I wrote about performance ratings and my experience with them at Accenture,
Mhm.
and since then as well. But I came across this quote, which is from Deming, and I didn't realize that Deming is probably one of the big thinkers of knowledge work, and he's kind of the guy behind Lean and the Toyota, and he worked a long
Okay.
time in Japan as well. And I was like, wow, Deming wrote about this, and so that's why I have it there. And yeah, as I'm kind of against, and it's not really born out of personal experience, but it's also there's a bunch of research that relates to this around the idiosyncratic rater syndrome, which is essentially that ratings are really only telling you about the person giving the rating and not about the person receiving the rating,
Hmm.
and that they don't really, I don't think they really help in the whole conversation. That's certainly been my personal experience, both as receiving ratings and then later having to rate people. So that's kind of that's, and I like to
Okay.
see that
Uh,
there's more articles and quotes going on about that in the industry. To be honest,
you're keep on saying ratings, and I think it's easier to understand with to agree with you if you say ratings, but uh, in your newsletter you were saying performance reviews, and
Mhm.
I think I would argue that a well-written, caring, strengths-focused review can be very helpful for a person in their professional career. I have
Yeah.
examples from my past, both as a giver of review and also as a receiver, that it can be really helpful to point
Mm.
out the person that you're amazing in these areas. These are
Mm,
your strengths. Things that are people are struggling with are
mm,
coming for some reason easy for you on this. But please use these strengths and look at these areas that don't have the spotlight of performance
yeah.
currently, and use these strengths to increase your impact of your work. This framing and
Mhm.
writing a review is super hard, but can be very very helpful. So I'm curious, how do you resolve this?
So just a question for you. Should that be annual? Because you're talking about getting feedback, right? A good structured feedback. Should
Yeah,
it be
that's a good
annual?
point. And I would even, yeah, because what you're hinting is that, I guess, is that this is a natural, almost day-to-day part of a managerial work. And I agree, actually. Yeah, and to the point that if you only do it once a year, then you're not effective. Regardless of how well you've written your review, first you don't have the context. Second,
Mm.
you don't have the trust of the person
And
to receive it
probably
well.
as a manager and as someone receiving them, what are your memories of those either 6 monthly or annual appraisal moments? Those the month when you have to write all of those, or
Over time.
I mean, because I found
That's
them
my
extremely
person.
stressful and
It's
horrible,
very
and
stressful. But I think the source of the stress is, for me at least, is realizing the impact this review can have. This is why I'm stressed when I'm writing an annual or 6 months review. Is that's a unique opportunity to have a lasting impact on the person's, like, this is going on file. This is going to be used in their promotional package if I write it well. This can change behaviors and set up the person for success. So for me, yeah, it's a super stressful period. I rarely overwork, but those times I guarantee to have some night shifts. But yeah, for me it was always because of realizing the importance of this and not questioning the whole exercise.
because I think that there can be a slightly lower stress. So first of all, I think what your point about it's not. I think so. Definitely for me, the rating is the thing I have
Yeah,
the biggest issue with.
yeah.
Um, the review. So people need feedback, and it needs to be structured and actionable, and I think sometimes that needs to be in writing for them
Hmm.
to. People need to receive feedback in
Hmm.
different modes, and obviously, we're both saying it needs to be continuous. um, But I do think like one of the things that we've done in the past of having some clear questions that the rater asks themselves about their experience working with someone
Hmm.
are can be probably a better way to kind of approach it and to to ask yourself those questions at least once a month
Hmm.
to ask why you're thinking the answers are and make sure you communicate that to the person. Probably the biggest can have the biggest impact, but
Yeah.
just having been someone who has written very long annual performance reviews, I do kind of hate
Yeah.
that as well because, like you, I want to do a good job and capture things well, but it's really tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I get your point. And like everything in life, for most stuff, it's a balance. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like that you added the point about having it in writing. In my experience, I found it very powerful. Like I remember I had someone on my teams who I had to give uncomfortable feedback, and it was easy to ignore from time to time until there was a time when it was in the yearly review,
Mm,
and seeing it explicit, that made the difference of the person finally hearing what I'm saying and taking actions on it. So yeah, I think the written word says, but to your point, it can be replaced. Like usually I like to do my one-on-ones with shared notes. So
mm, yeah,
that's also a good point of making sure that the message goes through.
exactly. Um, we should probably change tack unless
Okay,
you had another question, but I do.
no, that's
Uh,
fine. I mean,
have-
we can talk about the home lab after, because I'm curious what's up on that front. But yeah.
we can. Well, you have a regular feature in your newsletter about your home lab, so we can talk about it in there. Um, Switching tacks maybe, and what I can do is I'll share. Let me see. How does this go? Here we go. This is your. You actually wrote to. You're actually writing what I would say one long form article, typically a week, and then you have a more of like a retro sharing how your week went
Yeah, yeah,
article.
yeah, yeah. I even just thought about this because I struggled a lot with this. Like, I ended up having two separate mailing lists. One of them is for everything but the Friday summaries, and the other one is just the Friday summaries, because I I tend to get very personal in the Friday one. As I mentioned, I have a long blogging background, and I, even when I was working and we did this 15 fives where we summarized the weeks, I always added some personal aspect. I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's just narcissism, but I really enjoy doing that, and I see a lot of interesting stuff in the world that I like to share. But I don't want to force people who are just here for professional content to go through that also. And on the other hand, also there are some people who don't want to receive 2 or 3 emails per week from me, and that's why it's good to have this Friday summary, because there I link to the weekly ones. But yeah, to your point, that's what I'm shooting for: one
Mm.
or maybe even two big articles per week, and then the Friday summary.
Yeah, well, I love it. I think I find I follow a lot of people just for like the personal updates, even though
Mm,
I don't know them,
mm.
and I
Yeah,
find it
yeah,
fascinating. And so, and I think you write very engaging weekly updates, and I can see that you have kind of a good rhythm to your week. You've been really like consistently shipping on a Friday afternoon your weekly
yeah.
summary, and
Sometimes it's
usually you
hard.
usually get your long form article out before Thursday, I would say.
Usually that's the plan. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You're doing good. It's great.
Thanks. Yeah,
I'm impressed.
yeah. I mean, it's easier because I don't have much else in my professional life now, so we'll see. Yeah,
Yeah.
when the rubber hits the road.
Well, one this week's article, maybe I'll bring it back up
Okay.
on screen again. You were essentially, it was kind of like you appeared on a podcast, and it was kind of a dumping ground of your thoughts, I would say, more than like one of
Yeah,
your classical deep articles.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and I maybe I didn't make it clear enough that this is like a shared list of notes, maybe a bit better structured than just a random text file. But this is the result of my preparation. I was one of the guests on a Hungarian podcast where we were talking about the step above senior engineers, the staff engineers and principals and everything, and what it means, which was very interesting for this audience because Hungary is a small country. So unless you're working for an international company remotely, which actually a lot of people do in Hungary, unless you do that, there are not that many chances to experience what's above the senior level. So to this audience particularly was very interesting. I was there with a guy called Benedek, who's a staff engineer at Shopify, and the two regular hosts. And yeah, it was a good discussion. And like with everything, I'm writing to organize my thoughts also, and I'm writing to learn about the subject also. So preparing and publishing this after was helpful to organize my thoughts on the topic.
and I'm just curious, in the conversation, did you find any? Did your thinking on anything shift in the podcast? I'm just curious. Like,
Mm.
yeah, we didn't discuss this, but I'm just curious
Yeah,
if you
yeah, yeah.
felt
No,
something moving in on a topics or whatever.
I liked what Benedek was saying, because one of the main question is, why do companies have staff engineers? What is the need that it's solving? And for me, there are a lot of other lot of factors where an answer can be a staff engineer. Usually, it's about size or scope or everything. But he was saying that 3 areas: the technical, organizational, or product scope increase. When one of these is increasing and it's getting bigger, then there is a need for someone to oversee this increased impact, and not just work in
Mm.
smaller scope teams or product areas. My main answer to this question was the need for technological leadership. I think that's it's pretty much aligned with what Benedek was saying. So yeah,
Okay.
but no big shifts. Actually, we had some debates or slight debates about the time aspect.
Mm.
Uh, One
Oh,
of the
maybe we
hosts
can
was,
jump to that now.
yeah,
Actually, yeah.
maybe we can, yeah, because somebody on the podcast was saying that it's impossible to get to even to a senior level in 3 years or something. And I said, in my experience, I saw someone coming out fresh of university, very passionate about programming, and we just introduced the functional programming language of the company we were working at, and the person was picking it up very quickly and took on leadership roles, technical leadership roles quickly. So he made the jump to senior within 3 years. I don't remember the exact details, but it didn't take so much time.
Yeah, but I'm curious because you, in your notes, you wrote here 5 to 10 years.
Wow, yeah. As a minimum time, yeah,
Yeah,
that's stupid. I don't know why I wrote that. No, I mean, you see rough notes. So let
yeah,
me think about why I wrote that. I think, yeah, I came to this from a different angle because I see it sometimes when people are seemingly checking all the boxes, like they show some autonomy, technological leadership, maybe they have a successful project, and after a year or something they are banging on the door and flipping tables. Why am I not promoted to a staff level? I'm looking at the requirements and I'm checking every box. What else is needed? And when you try to say that it needs some time, it can be very frustrating to hear,
yeah,
because what I'm usually framing is, my framing is that you need to show sustained high performance, or the expected performance to the level that you're aiming at. Because let's be honest, success can be attributed to a lot of stuff. There is a big part of luck, there is a big part of circumstances, a lot of teamwork, and not many individual work that defines success. So just having one or two successful projects, it doesn't show this sustained performance for me. So I think this
yeah,
is why I came to adding this 5 to 10 years. But to be honest, it's really not that strict. it,
yeah.
it's really varies by person.
When I think about it, I think over time you start to see patterns repeating
Mm,
in our industry. Like if I just think about it from an architectural perspective, whether the whole microservices, client
yeah.
server, there's like they're all the same patterns that were all invented in I don't know the 70s or something by just a handful of computer scientists. And I think that you need time to encounter those scenarios in your career, different ones,
Mm,
and figure out, like, maybe even encounter them a couple of times to figure out how to deal with those patterns, and then to get better at not just following like a rote script in those situations, but actually being able to take the tools in your toolbox and using them in different or slightly different ways. It's kind of like that. Probably going to mess up this explanation a little bit, but the shu ha ri, kind of like, you can just from like Japanese martial arts and learning, which is you can follow a basic kata and do it, versus understanding why you're doing the kata
mm,
and everything else, to actually combining those concepts with other things in completely different ways, but much more like like if you I had I got my partner Claire does shiatsu massage, and I had one moment where the master of the whole thing, this Japanese guy, did something on me, and was it was so direct and to the thing. It didn't follow all the fancy stuff that you do in shiatsu, and it was just like boom and into the moment and like fix it kind of thing.
mm.
And I think I think you need time to develop that uh, from the scenarios. That's kind of why. So I don't know if it's 5, 10 years. I don't know, but I do think um, for people wanting to be staff, they need to place themselves in situations where they can encounter those. Doesn't mean changing companies all the time necessarily, but they need to create the environment, or companies need to create the environment. And frankly, the other thing I wanted to add is, the bigger the company, sometimes the more opportunity you have.
Yeah.
Or like the super small companies may never give you that because you're only doing the same thing anyway.
Yeah. Plus, also the company doesn't need this kind of overarching technological leadership if it's just, I don't know, 10 engineers.
Yeah, because like I worked at when I was the CTO of Ocus, I had one guy who was an absolute brain box who masterminded the entire system that we built. And when we got to the end of it and it was all in production and all working, and we worked through all the kinks, and it was really like a major achievement. There wasn't scope for him to go on do do anything else. Um, so like the size of the petri dish that you're in kind of
Yeah,
limits
yeah,
that. And
yeah. But if I sit on the other side of the table for a moment, it can be very frustrating to hear from an engineer that I'm all ambitious, I will give me all the challenges in the world, and to hear from their manager that, well, I'm sorry, there are just no opportunities. Let's figure something out how you can still grow and develop. What what do you think we could do at this point?
But our job as managing people isn't just the responsibility doesn't end at just the scope of work. It's actually goes beyond where they're working for you. It's to prepare them for their next. It's ideally to prepare them for the next thing inside your company and to work in the company to create that and retain people. But like there's the book called The Alliance by Reid Hoffman,
Hmm.
talking about how LinkedIn works, which is kind of like these concept of tours of duty. And ideally, you create the tours of duty for people inside the company, and they're very clearly defined. And over this like next year or two, you're going to do X or Y, and then find the next one or whatever. And I think I see it like that. So if and I've been in this situation many times, there isn't something in the company for the next stage right now for somebody, and your goal is to try and help prepare them for the next stage in maybe some other activities around their role. Um, Give them some of those experiences. Sometimes it's a waiting game, because opportunities do crop up. Like there's turnover in orgs, and that creates opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it's just preparing them for that interview and the next job outside. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Like,
Or you can find some open source contributions, like encourage the person to look into open source software. That was another part of, because I
yeah,
usually end my Friday newsletters with some recommendations about articles, and one of them was someone who wrote about how you can grow personally, professionally by open source contributions, and I really agreed with that article.
yeah, this is interesting. I want to ask you about this. When you say that, is it as part of your job, like in the 9 to 5?
Hmm. I would say there is place for that in your 9 to 5. Like obviously, if it has zero connections to the company and we are dealing with delays and everything, I don't want to see you going away for a full day to I don't know, create a pull request for one of for Plex or something. But I I think working on an open source software can have a lot of gains, professional gains for the person that they can then utilize in their day-to-day 9 to 5 work. And it's not just technical skills. There are a lot of soft skills, like open source software. It's you need to learn a lot of stuff, how you communicate in a pull request, because if you don't write the ideal pull request, be prepared to be ignored. If you find an area of a software that you want to change, you need to convince the community that what you're pushing for is good, and you have zero authority there. You're nobody. So picking up these skills, learning how to do this, it can be very beneficial in the professional context also, when you're writing an RFC or a pull request or something within the company. So I don't have a silver bullet. I don't know what is a good balance, but I would encourage people to try to find a way how it can be fit, yes, into at least part of the 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think I'm of a couple of different minds of this. One is, like obviously,
Especially if you work for Red Hat, for example, that
yeah,
can be it's easier to find place for that.
yeah. So there's definitely like so one thought I have on the whole open source thing is you should definitely not judge people for open source contribute. If you've got two candidates, one has got loads of stuff on GitHub and you can see their contributions to different things, and the other one doesn't shouldn't be a judge of if you're picking between the two, because a lot of people
Actually,
work in environments.
I would pick the one who has a lot of open source contributions from the if
It
because
depends if they
I'm
both interview
hearing that
equally.
you're hinting at the other way around. Like I would pick someone who doesn't get occupied with all the other hobbies, but to me, it's a strong signal of a lot of these skills that I was talking about.
I hesitate a little bit because that is the classical advice, but just some people work in environments where they're they've got a family, they've got other commitments outside of work. They're a great developer. The company they work for doesn't give them any scope to do, but they do an amazing job there. And so I wouldn't be the only thing, obviously,
Yeah.
but if they're, but it's just a dangerous thing to do. And frankly, I've seen some people that work for me that did loads of stuff on open source, but they didn't put as much into the day job. It's a kind of like it can be
Yeah.
a,
Yeah, I
like,
saw that happening. Yeah.
yeah, we had I don't know if we can talk about it, but there was performance related. We've had to deal with performance related issue with someone where
Hmm.
they were not performing at work, and you could see that there were contributions outside that were during the kind of like classical normal working hours, and that's
Hmm.
an issue,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, I
um
agree with that. Yeah.
but so I do think like companies, if you're using open source as part of your platform,
Oh, yeah,
uh,
that's another point. Yeah. Yeah.
enabling
Yeah.
people to contribute back upstream.
Hmm.
Now I've worked with
Encourage
banks
more
and
than
stuff.
enable.
I've worked
Yeah.
at banks and stuff where they can't. They in the past they couldn't. I think it's changing now. It's changed a
Yeah.
lot. In one scenario, we got paid to contribute code in Red Hat. We got paid to contribute code that had already been written, but they couldn't directly do it, so we had to do it through like a
Oh,
consulting thing.
wow.
But that's all changed, I think, now a lot. But I do think if you're using open source, then be and either contribute. I think companies should pay if they can towards either through
Mm,
subscription or maybe if it's a solo developer, try and support some of that work.
mm.
And the other is just contribute to the projects that are really critical to your platform. And that, so to your point, that can be something interesting. The other thing is open sourcing components of your platform can actually be part of the strategy of the company, and then it
That's
allows
a
the
very good point.
feature development that you're doing to be like out there and for people to see that. And there's a, I think like we did that in where we worked before. We open source some bits of our code base,
Mm,
and that really it's really great for engineers to be able to start to manage issues and pull requests from outside and so on. So I think I agree with you that it's one way that you can help people grow.
nice. I guess this, like other things, are a balance.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. We have a few
Um,
minutes left. Want to talk about your recent home lab experiences and
oh
how
yeah, so yeah, one of the things that it seems like we always talk about when we get together is what's been the latest development in our
geeky
home lab.
stuff? Yeah.
Um, you've done a cool project as well. Maybe just I'll share my well, there's two things really. I maybe like one bit of it is that um, I bought something. Hard to keep that one
That's,
in. So
yeah.
I
What did you buy, Jeremy? Confess.
for a really long time, I've been pretty much running most of my home lab on a QNAP NAS that's got a reasonable processor, and it's actually running most of. I think I've got 44 containers running in it on
Oh,
two
nice. Okay.
VMs. Is running most of it. Home Assistant runs outside of it because I just needed my home automation to be like have I don't know. I needed physical hardware and bits and pieces. And I've got a couple
That makes
other.
sense from a security point of view, I would say also. Like,
I don't know. Not well. I think my home lab is slowly hardened over time because I used to expose ports to the internet,
mm,
and I use Cloudflare for that now,
mm,
and so on. But um, yeah, so I kind of got more and more unhappy with using QNAP for everything,
mhm.
like their operating system, and it's kind of locked down and and so on. So I'm moving away, and I've had a long-term project to basically move to kind of an all-in-one box um, that powers my router. So I want to combine. This is kind of danger zone, like given the other story I have, but I want to run one machine that will have a virtualized router, which I currently have
Oh wow, okay.
because my router is a physical hardware. It's like an Edge motivation for that is also I have faster than 1 gig fiber internet, but my router can only route 1 gig, and I would
Okay.
love to be able to get faster internet routing speed. So I found a box that has 10 gig ports, so it's going to route and it can route. It has a beefy enough processor to route 10 gig internet because I do actually have 10 gig internet.
Wow.
And I'm going to plug in an HDBA card and move my all storage in and have a virtualized NAS. So that could like ruin everything. Um,
Yeah.
but I bought the box. I bought like all the hardwares. I've got my 96 gigs of RAM. I've got 3 SSDs, one super
Jesus.
fast to boot, and then 2 RAID for everything.
Whoa. Oh,
But
Christmas time.
yeah, except the boxes that I ordered is kind of a bit too popular in the home labbing. It's a minis forum MSO1 if you search
Oh
for
yeah,
home
yeah,
notes.
yeah.
And
Wow. Sold out for months.
yeah, end of May or early June is the ETA.
So
So
wow. Okay,
yeah.
so they are all just sitting on your desk collecting dust and your wishful glances.
Oh yeah, it's really hard to look at, and anyway, I've just had to resign myself to it. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, I tried to prep my home lab a bit more for the arrival of the new box when it
Okay.
comes, because I want to build a few things from scratch for that. So
That's very interesting. It's almost like this microservices versus monoliths debate. Like you seem like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Like I know
yeah,
about virtualization and hypervisors and everything, but still, if the CPU dies in your box and everything, you don't have internet at home. If that's your router, also.
my family can already tell you about incidents and
Yeah,
outages.
I know. Yeah, nothing like a high severity incident when two children and your wife are banging on the door. There is no internet. And like, I know I'm on it. I just needed to upgrade the, I don't know, Pi-hole DNS and something went
Exactly.
wrong.
Yeah, you take down DNS. DNS has to be up. The router virtualizing it. That's probably a bit scary. And if you have like, as I run Plex, and if Plex goes down when someone's watching it, or
Yeah.
because Plex is shared with sometimes I'm with some of my family who are not in the house, and then they're watching something, and then my brother gives me a call and say, "It just went down. Is there something wrong?" It's like, um,
Wow.
yeah, so we'll see. That'll be an adventure. I may end up having to have like a dual and do live migration and have a switch at the front that kind of allows
Okay.
the VM
That's
to
fun.
kind of
Load
migrate between the
balancing
two.
or just hot swapping or
Yeah,
moving
we'll
from
see
one
where
to
we get
another.
to with that.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well,
But I did have an incident
tell me
this
about
week,
it.
or not this week, but 2 weeks ago, and it ruined my weekend.
Why
So I
would
was
someone do that voluntarily? Like I have PTSD from the time when I was hosting some companies' websites and everything. That was like almost 20 years ago. And I remember particularly one vacation when I spent most of the time on the phone with the ISP and trying to figure out remotely what's wrong with the server. So why would someone do that voluntarily?
in a sort of self-flagellating way, it's kind of fun at the end. I don't know. You learn something. I think
Yeah.
every instant you learn something. So in my case, short version, I was working a little bit late, and I I'd made a change. I restarted the the container that was running everything was running in, and it didn't come back, and everything was broken. And as you know, I'm brave enough to host my own website
Yeah.
and a bunch of other stuff. And I really feel the pain of that being down. And so it was midnight, I think,
Yeah.
and I couldn't figure out what the issue was. And and then, so in the end, I rebuilt an alternative. So thankfully, I had everything in running. Everything was running in containers, and everything is kind of, my whole thing is just running under Docker Compose and stuff. So I stood up an
Mm.
entirely new version, a new kind of
Oh, okay.
VM to run everything, and it was, I went to bed at 5 a.m. Just put it that
Oh
way.
man.
It was like,
Wow.
wow, but I got a backup of it all working, but it wasn't working as well. And then
Hmm.
a day later, I figured out what it was, which is that QNAP had some kind of, I had upgraded to QNAP operating system, and for some reason, when I rebooted my LXD container, the LXD container came back with less permissions, and
Ah,
it didn't have all the same like
this
permissions to be able
privileged
to.
versus unprivileged thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the privilege thing was still there, but it was that all like the /sys and /sys
Oh
proc all
wow.
were mounted as read only, and I had to like I fixed it all, but that's why I want to get away from QNAP as well, because it's always things like that. They're doing funky stuff. They have an old kernel version that runs in the OS, and just it's too proprietary for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, that was my
Yeah.
incident.
Okay. Nice. Well, I'm glad
And
you
I'm gonna
escaped.
go for even worse by running my router and everything in a VM.
I mean, I admire your courage. I would never virtualize my router in the same box that, I don't know, runs my Plex and whatever else I'm I'm running. It's brave,
We'll see.
to say it
Uh,
mildly.
yeah, but I think you've been doing a really cool project. I'd love for you to sort
What do
of,
you mean? Ah, yeah, the microcontroller thing. That's
yeah.
just a whole other rabbit hole. I have it here. It's now it's on a. This is just a battery. This is the microcontroller. Actually, it's landed from a friend of mine now. It's an ESP32, and this is just a small LCD display, and it's showing the bus departure times, weather, and time now. It's just a proof of concept because I want to build something bigger. This e-ink home dashboard kind of thing that I saw a few weeks ago and wrote about it in my newsletter. Yeah, that's the one. I find the aesthetics amazing. Like, if on this picture, one out of the four pictures is actually an e-ink display, the bottom left, the other three are just static paper
Mm,
things, and it's just I really like this blend of usual home stuff with technology. So I want to display various stuff, like, yeah, we have a bus stop at the end of the street, so it's crucial information if I need to run there, or I can take a leisurely walk to catch the next bus. And well, simple stuff like what's in the family calendar. Did we order food for the kids in the school, or do they have to bring something? This kind of things. But beyond everything, it's just a hobby. It's just for fun and learn something new.
it's awesome, I think. And I kind of had a question for you, just tying it back to engineering and the broader topic. And I'm just curious, as a leader, an engineering leader, you're less and less hands-on in a way. Um, how important do you think it is, all this kind of hacking around, getting your hands dirty, doing some hands-on technical stuff?
I think it has a lot of advantages. I actually wrote about this in the context of home labbing, why I think engineering leaders should like, it's a good hobby.
Mm,
It's first, there's the obvious aspect of being hands-on, like as you said, as you're moving into a manager role, or even in, especially if you're increasing scope, you get less and less hands-on. Actually, I advise first-time managers to do that,
mm,
not be hands-on. And so it just scratches this itch of writing something that works immediately or fails, as opposed to management, when you do something and in 1 month you will figure out if it was the good idea or not. um, but also it can have a lot of benefits about prioritization, product mindset. Like, as some of our examples show, we can spend a lot of time on a project, but if you get more disciplined, and if you especially have limited resources in time, like
mm,
we all have, then it's a very interesting and hard prioritization game about what will I spend my time
mm,
on when I'm doing my hobby. What also, it's good in this outcome-based thinking. Like,
mm,
it's easy to get lost in the rabbit hole with the next new shiny toy and just trying stuff out. But if you keep in mind like what I want to achieve, I want to achieve this home dashboard or whatever, then that kind of thinking can
Mhm.
help you stay on track, and it's a very, very useful skill in a professional context also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, personally, I really agree with it. And because I had a kind of follow up question for you on this. And there's some people I've worked with who came in from maybe non traditional backgrounds
Mm,
into engineering leadership, and actually less technical, maybe being a project manager, and showed that they were great at managing people and they could, work with engineers and do delivery. I think the key things for being an engineering manager. And I'm curious, what do you say for people with some, or some of those backgrounds who are in engineering leadership? Like, what is your thoughts or advice for them around this whole hands-on technical stuff? Because the other backstory of this is that I see now that kind of we're in this wartime mode. Companies don't have money,
mm.
running out of money. They're all saying we need hands-on engineering managers, and they need to manage 20 people. And so, like,
Yeah, I'm going to have a short answer for this because we're already over time. I totally agree with you that this is a super important and very timely topic. So maybe we should shelve it for a deeper discussion. My short answer is that a manager has much bigger potential positive impact on an organization paying attention to the people and the execution than writing code or staying in the code. And I don't want to get into the details of what does technical really mean, because
mm,
I think engineering leaders should be technical to some extent, but I really don't think they should write code. But maybe we should leave it as a teaser for a next episode, because I'm really curious how you see that also. And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with your short answer, 100%. Um, I think people want to know that their manager understands what they're doing. And so there's a certain bar, I think, of knowledge about what people are doing. And um, doesn't mean that you need to be able to code, but I think you need to have some understanding of the workflow of an engineer.
sure. Sure. Like if you don't know what's a pull request, or if
Mm,
you don't know what's a deployment,
mhm.
but I mean the
Yeah,
bar
to
is a bit
some.
higher, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think, and
But I get your point. Yeah.
I certainly think, like, I think it really. I don't think they need to be hacking in a home lab, and not everyone needs to be hacking in a home lab, like maybe you and I have been doing. Um, but I do think that everybody needs to be spending a little bit of their time sharpening the saw of knowledge, whether that's
Mm.
reading books or other ways, other avenues for growing and learning. I would say that.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. It's generic enough for me not to argue with that.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
No. I really agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think it's a good point to stop. Because
yeah,
really the topic is too big.
yeah. Well, I think we're kind of. I mean, we had loads of questions that we were going to ask each other, and
Yeah, and one of the learnings of the retrospect is that we
yeah,
overplanned with content, and we went over time, which I'm really not happy about. I'm usually very disciplined about keeping my meetings on time, um, but I really enjoyed this experiment, this second episode, which is number one after the number zero, and yeah, looking forward to the next one.
yeah. If you've been listening along, thank you. If you're still here
Yeah,
with
thanks.
us, would love some comments and feedback for Peter and I. If you're listening to the recording, also, we'll make this available, and so we'd love your feedback on that. And we're going to just try iterating over the next few weeks, and then we'll see. Do we keep going? And but
Yeah, it's an experiment.
yeah, personally, Peter, I really enjoyed chatting with you over these topics.
Similarly, yeah,
Yeah,
it was fun. All
and
right.
awesome. With that, that's episode 1
Yeah.
finished.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, cheers. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.